no one else does. I have to find every fault in everything around me. And for as much fun as that is to talk about, like shock jocks in New York and a niche shock jock show that we talked about, this is the guiding ideology here for millions of people.
Yeah. No, and like that would become more apparent. But like just one last thing about the Reverend Jerry Falwell Sr., again, currently in the ninth circle of hell, being tortured for eternity, is that I've mentioned this on the show before, but it is something that bears repeating and something that you should keep in mind whenever you think about the modern evangelical right-wing conservative movement. Reverend Jerry Falwell Sr. got into politics not as like as part of a moral reaction against increasing liberalization in American society regarding Roe v. Wade and women entering the workforce in large numbers, which
desegregation,
which is usually credited with the creation of the modern Christian right when they decided to throw off, their aversion to worldly politics and get involved in, campaigning and the Republican Party. Because before that, evangelicals were, they were not a mobilized political force, and things like voting was considered like rendering unto Caesar.
Right.
And now they have become Caesar in many ways. But the motivating force for what a lot of these guys, including Reverend Jerry Falwell Sr., was chief among them, the reason they got involved with politics was the desegregation, a ruling that made it illegal to have segregated private religious schools.
Well, it eliminated their federal subsidies.
Okay.
Was what it did.
All right.
And they were like, fuck that.
So, the issue that they got involved in was about desegregation.
Yes, that's what actually riled them up, is the idea that they would have to, in order to keep getting federal money, now they could keep them around. They could no longer segregate a school and get federal money, and that was too much. They had to march on Washington for that.
Yeah. No, again, keep in mind, arch segregationists.
Yeah.
And exactly. It's not enough to keep the segregated religious academies.
Yeah.
We got to get money from the federal government, too.
Yeah.
All right. Reverend Jerry Falwell Sr., the Baptist preacher who founded Liberty University and whose creation of the moral majority marked the emergence of white evangelical conservatives as a national political force, made clear how he wanted the empire he'd built to be divided when the time came. His two sons, Jerry Jr. and Jonathan, had each inherited different aspects of their father's persona. For Jerry Jr., the elder of the two by 4 years, it was the stomach for partisan politics, ability to throw an elbow, and the savvy to court influential friends. For Jonathan, it was the calling to ministry, his easy way with people and charisma as a public speaker. Jerry Jr. would preside over Liberty University, and Jonathan would lead Thomas Road Baptist Church. Each son had worked under their father at their respective institutions. Each knew well what those positions would require. A bigger question remained: who would step into Falwell Sr.'s unique role as a national figurehead at the crossroads of evangelical Christianity and conservative politics? A man who counted presidents and senators as friends, a public figure whose outspoken statements riled critics and endeared him to conservatives, and whose endorsement carried real weight with a certain segment of voters. After the death of Falwell Sr., many within his tight-knit community expected Jonathan to pick up the mantle. A preacher by training, Jonathan had pastoral sensitivities and a personable nature that his brother Jerry lacked. Jonathan's a great speaker and an orator, a people person, one current top Liberty University close to the Falwell family told me. Jerry can't complete a sentence in person. He's nervous. It's not just him, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. There's nothing wrong with our boy, okay? Now, you really don't want him to be in charge of the entire university? He really wants to.
Yeah. Oh, man. That is...
And this is something, as Felix, you mentioned earlier, this is something that we witnessed live and in person at CPAC. His unique, stammering, quavering public persona.
Well, it is like, it's a very boring thing to point to. It's a very hack thing to point to, but projection. Yeah. Like, isn't this just the greatest participation trophy of all time? Like, this guy literally, just person to person, can't get a word in edgewise. Just can't get it out. Just can't, for the life of him, cannot make a coherent sentence that grips you. It just, his verbal energy is that of a dead slug falling down a staircase. And they're like, no, let's put him in charge of the university. Let's put him on TV. Let's put him at CPAC to do some type of comedy panel with the president's also shitty son. And why? Well, he was the guy. He really wants to do it.
Yeah. He was his son. That's what he would have wanted, and and that's how you're immortal. The real immortality comes in the ability to hoard obscene wealth and power and then distribute it to your shitty children for eternity.
Heaven is a place on earth without Jews.
But again, in this dynamic between Jerry Jr., the elder one, and Jonathan, the younger one, is almost perfectly mirrored in the relationship between Jesse Gemstone, Danny McBride, and Kelvin Gemstone, Adam Devine. Because like Kelvin is the younger one, and he's shit upon by all his elder siblings. But like he has the soft heart. He's the youth minister.
Yeah,
he wants to reach out to the teens and change people's lives. Whereas Jesse is just a pure con artist and shithead.
Yeah, cares about
and
nothing.
Criminal. Like he's just a crook, entirely. So it goes here. But Jerry had a passion for politics, a talent for riling up a certain type of cultural conservative, and a spouse, Becky, who, while publicly playing the role of the quiet, supportive Baptist housewife, knew how to get her way. You know there's a head of every family, said a former university employee who worked closely with Becky Falwell for many years. But what turns the head? The neck. She's the neck that turns the head wherever she wants it.
There is that evangelical literary tradition.
Heavy is the neck that holds the head.
Now I used to I've had insomnia my entire life, and I had a little shitty 10-inch TV that I would play games on in my room when I was a kid, and sometimes I would stay up so late I would see evangelical programming on, and I got very attuned to the evangelical speech patterns and their horrible analogies, but just hearing it every day is great. You have to act like every day is a job interview with God. Holy fuck.
So it goes here. Until Big Jerry died, you wouldn't have known Becky if she walked up and slapped you, said a former longtime Liberty official. Big Jerry dies, and all of a sudden, if you're walking down the hall and you didn't greet her right, you're fired. As if to underline the point, one longtime university employee shared a 2012 email in which Becky contacted 4 school executives at 7:06 p.m. to complain that a low-level university employee had posted a Facebook status on her personal account criticizing a lack of adequate parking on campus. Someone needs to talk to this girl. I don't think we allow employees to post negative remarks about Liberty, Becky wrote to the school's officials in a message that included a screenshot of the employee's post. Shortly before 9 p.m., one senior official replied, "We are attempting to call her at home right now." The woman in question did not respond to requests for comments, but according to her Facebook profile, she is no longer an employee of Liberty University.
This is like living in the Islamic State, but with less community.
But yeah, we see Becky Falwell as a real Lady Macbeth figure. And again, I'm sorry, Jesse Gemstone's wife on the show is this character to a T.
Yep.
Someone who is not, I guess, completely in denial about her husband's antics and infidelities, but someone who's willing to play the part of I just think it's the wife's duty to support her husband.
Yeah.
But what that really means is she is the power behind the throne to support me. Because if my husband gets outed as a philanderer and an apostate, then my rich lifestyle will suffer. So it's not in my interest to have any kind of honest accounting about the type of man or relationship that we have.
But that is the perfect symmetry of the foul son lifestyle, in that you end up marrying a mom to yourself.
Yeah.
This is the destiny of all foul sons, of the foul sons of success.
Yeah.
So basically, it goes on to talk about how after Jerry Falwell Sr. died, everyone thought Jonathan was the obvious heir apparent to the role that Falwell Sr. played. But Jerry Jr., basically through his sharp elbows and sort of sleazy business dealings, has essentially neutralized Jonathan as any kind of force at Liberty University through Jerry Jr.'s control of, guess what? All of the money and all of the real estate.
Yeah.
Where all the real power is. So it goes... Jonathan, top Liberty officials say Jonathan doesn't hold any sway, spiritual or otherwise. As a general rule, said a former high blah, 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 Falwell Sr. spoke every Wednesday in convocation all year long. His desire was that whoever was the pastor of Thomas Road would continue the tradition and speak at Liberty. I think Jonathan speaks maybe a few times a year. Jerry never removed Jonathan, another top official said. He just kind of pushed him aside. When longtime confidants of the Falwell family make clear that Becky loves Jonathan, their family, after all, said one longtime Liberty blah, blah, blah. The phrase longtime Liberty employee is used quite a bit here. Many feel that she worked hard to make sure that everyone knew it was her husband and not her brother-in-law who would assume the elder Falwell's mantle as a leading figurehead in the evangelical movement. Going on here, it says, Liberty University is transformed under Jerry Falwell Jr.'s leadership. When he took over as president in 2007, the school, which is a nonprofit, had listed assets of just over $259 million on its then most recent IRS Form 990. In its filing for the fiscal year ending in June 2017, its assets surpassed $2.5 billion. That number is now more than $3 billion, according to public statements Falwell made in 2018. That growth is driven largely by a vast increase in the number of online students at the school, who now number some 95,000. So Liberty University has, under his reign, like you said, Matt, gone from being this sort of citadel of conservative Christianity, the evangelical ivy,
turning out these
the
students,
generation of leaders to go on to compete with Harvard and Yale, to like the online university.
It's a fucking university.
They're doing
Phoenix.
digital gardening.
It's like
Howard is a problem.
It's like they show you a captcha of the Last Supper. It's like, click on all of the faithful apostles.
It is, and it's a great analogy for the decline of America, because what was once an awful, cynical institution, but nonetheless a functioning institution that pumped out, the next generation of people who do gay conversion therapy and run these fucking disgusting Best Buy mega churches, is now just a money grab, which it was before, but it's not even doing its.
It's not even doing the stated function. It's just raking in money.
So many Falwell confidants are concerned with where they see that university tuition money going, into university-funded construction and real estate projects that enrich the Falwell family and their friends. Among these projects is a Lynchburg shopping center that is owned by Liberty University, but which members of the Falwell family have a personal stake in operating. In an email dated July 18th, 2012, Falwell informed several university executives that his son, Trey Falwell, was starting a new company to do the management of properties owned by the school, including the shopping center. Again, this is a nonprofit religious institution, and they're just like, we're gonna take over this failing shopping center and turn it. It's like Tim and Eric's $1 billion movie, but they're a religious institution technically.
Yeah, that's paper.
I just can't get over his kid Trey Falwell.
Trey Falwell. Would it surprise you to know that he's Jerry Falwell III, and that's why they call him that?
They call him Trey because he's Jerry Falwell III.